what Schadenfreude is.
No, I do not know what Schadenfreude is. Please tell me because I'm dying to know.
It's a German term for shameful joy, taking pleasure in the suffering of others.
It seems more and more that not a week goes by when some celebrity, media figure, or politician is being cancelled, mocked for embarrassing behavior, and shunned from polite society. Hence the term cancel culture. Perhaps in part because this constant canceling is an untenable trend that cannot sustain itself, and hopefully in part because for every other cancelled person, one is redeemed, either being generally forgiven for their transgressions, the news becoming old hat and uninteresting, or often because they have been vindicated. Or I guess in the case of some celebrities, because their detractors mysteriously contracted Livent. It seems a lot of people are starting to become skeptical of cancel culture. I'm certainly skeptical after having reported on some of it, and I wasn't even talking about the scandals itself, just the psychology related to it. If you haven't already, go subscribe or resubscribe to Pro Jared, because he was perhaps one of the most egregious victims of this trend, and I truly feel bad for reporting on it. But despite that, even after so many of these scandals have been disproven, and when even more have ceased to be funny, why are so many people morbidly curious at the death of the careers of others and their social lives? While we may enjoy a good redemption arc, I know I do, so often those arcs now seemingly arise from fabricated falls, and it seems that the vast degree of public attention tends to focus far more on the negative than the positive. While that alone could be easily explained by the psychological phenomenon known as the negativity bias, why do we gossip and why do we cheer when we watch the powerful plummet from their positions of power? In our culture that is seemingly obsessed with celebrity worship, why is it that beloved position is always teetering at the edge of turning into abject hate? Today, let's look at some of the science behind Schadenfreude, the pleasure derived from someone else's pain. Who feels it and when? And what are the relationships between Schadenfreude and psychological traits like narcissism as well as envy? Given that Schadenfreude so often seems to apply to the most beautiful, wealthiest, and most powerful members of society, why do we love to see celebrities humbled? But before we talk about why people love to hate celebrities, let me tell you about a service that makes it easy for you to watch films and television shows featuring the celebrities you love to love or maybe love to hate, even if they aren't available in your region, and that's Surfshark VPN. Plenty of services like Amazon Video and Netflix have region-locked content, which means not everyone everywhere in the world can watch their favorite films or TV shows, like classic British comedies Red Dwarf or Bottom when using US Netflix, or a personal US favorite of mine, Community.
Ha! Gay!
With what shows being available where constantly changing, a VPN is sometimes the only way to watch your favorite media, and you can do just that with Surfshark VPN, either using the Surfshark application or through their easy-to-use browser extension. Not only does a VPN give you access to shows and movies not available in your region, it can also help you find great deals online and generally protects your browsing from companies and entities that might be interested in tracking your data. Surfshark even helps prevent identity theft by alerting you anytime your email address or passwords show up on the web. If you click the link in the description, you'll get a 2-year plan with Surfshark for 84% off. That's just $2 a month to protect your browsing safety, and get access to a bunch of otherwise unavailable media where you live. Plus, when you sign up with my code AYDIN, that's AYDIN, you'll get 4 months of service absolutely free. Although it can't bring back classic shows and episodes that have been cancelled after being deemed too spicy for 2020, it can help you forget about that dumpster fire of a year and ring in the new one with countless classics, or perhaps even by watching some content with the celebrities that you do love to hate. So, why do we love to hate celebrities? The lives of average people can hardly compare to those of the rich and famous. Hey, that's why they wrote a song about it. And while that may be a major rationale in why people enjoy lifestyle content, perhaps it is also these differences that may explain why so many people love to see celebrities embarrassed in tabloids and gossip news. So to begin our investigation on why we love to hate celebrities, let's listen to what people have to say about why they enjoy spicy celebrity talk. Johansson, 2004, conducted a small study to see how tabloid news influenced the opinions of British participants who regularly read articles printed in gossip outlets, The Sun and the Daily Mirror. Consumers then communicated with one another in small focus group settings about their reading habits. Immediately, several participants, but particularly male participants, noted that they found the publications to be, quote, rubbish or a waste of time, yet also simultaneously expressed that they enjoyed reading about the drama. Nay, they insisted that everyone enjoys reading about it. And certainly, if Keemstar's career is any kind of a measurement to judge this by, yeah, people like drama. One participant, Michael, explicated that he found tabloids interesting because they allowed him to fantasize about the lifestyles of the rich and the famous, while others in the group similarly noted the mundane nature of their own lives in comparison to the lives of celebrities, which in turn made those lives seem interesting to read about. The same people also emphasized that they did not feel they could connect with these stories on a personal level, thus perhaps depersonalizing the celebrities that they read about, unpersoning them. Both male and female participants expressed that the lives of celebrities were wholly unlike their own lives. One participant, Helena, further specified the ease of the lives of celebrities and how this separates them from average people, stating, quote, "They flippin' got money. They split up with their boyfriends, they can go out and spend because they got loads of money. When we split up with our boyfriends, I ain't got loads of money to go out and spend nothing."
Oi, you! Shut your mouth and look at my wad! Loads of money!
Another woman in this study, Maria, similarly noted how her experiences as a single mother were worlds apart from celebrity single moms, who have plenty of money and time and thus do not suffer from the same issues that she does, thus potentially making Maria feel worse about her own life circumstances when comparing it to that of celebrities. This social comparison proclivity was further illustrated in a talk between several women in separate focus groups, who noted the fun that accompanies seeing celebrities being embarrassed in public because it humanizes them, with Alexandra noting, quote, "Yeah, like you've got all the money in the world, but you still look rough or whatever when you get up in the morning." A male respondent, Daniel, further described the enjoyment he feels when watching a celebrity make a fool of themselves, illustrating that both men and women seem to just like seeing celebrities being taken down a peg. Others were even more open about their feelings towards celebrities, with bus driver Ronnie saying that reading about them makes him jealous, and shop assistant Catherine noting that sometimes she just wants to hate them, specifically because of their wealth and lifestyle. Maria further explained that she feels celebrities most surely think of themselves as better than the average people, so when she finds out that they've done something wrong, it lowers them, allowing her to think, quote, "Well, you're not so great, are you?" Illustrating a type of Schadenfreude. And other research, as we'll soon see, has illustrated such a connection between Schadenfreude and envy, particularly perhaps of famous or popular public figures. Moreover, one participant, Nicole, notes that she uses tabloid news as a method of communication with her boyfriend, and the authors suggest that discussion of tabloid news is a method through which people navigate moral issues collectively by coming together to decide and determine whether or not some behavior is morally permissible or reprehensible. Somewhat ironically then, Schadenfreude itself can manifest in some rather reprehensible tendencies, namely enjoying not only others being socially humiliated in tabloids or celebrity gossip, but often by finding amusement in very real tragedies that befall famous people, as a study from Guillen and al. 2018 illustrated. Participants were asked to think about their favorite sports figure and how much they liked that person. They then read a story about a hit and run involving that celebrity, where the celebrity's guilt in the event was either ambiguous or made very clear. Only participants who selected a favorite athlete of the same race were selected for this experiment to account for the tendency for people to engage in social comparisons to those that are more similar to themselves. Let me explain. Women are more likely to compare themselves to other women, and men to other men, and so on. Thus, this experiment was only concerned with participants whose favorite sports star was one of the same race. Make of that whatever you will. Across the sample, individuals who felt more strongly about their favorite sports celebrity tended to report slightly less Schadenfreude in response to news of the apparent hit-and-run accident involving that athlete. Interestingly though, the researchers found that Black students in this sample both reported stronger positive feelings about their favorite celebrities, but also took greater pleasure in that celebrity's misfortunes than did white students. This again may be due to social comparison, in that we tend to both like people that we see as more similar to us, but also take the most joy in the suffering of those we see as similar to us because it brings them down to our level, Or, additionally, it could be a product of black people feeling as though they inherently have a tougher shake at life, and therefore are more likely to enjoy seeing a wealthy and famous black sports star being humbled.
This kid sure can dribble, but he shoots like shit. Nothing. Absolute pure air, folks.
Looking at some additional international findings to put this into context, Watanabe 2016 similarly examined feelings of Schadenfreude in Japanese viewers of American Idol, because, as previously explained, Schadenfreude tends to apply more to those who share our sex or race via social comparison. Watanabe selected only Asian American participants on Idol who performed poorly, subtitled in Japanese to expose to his participants. In the first experiment, participants were asked to rate a contestant's singing, his or her physical attractiveness, as well as both the harshness and appropriateness of the judges' comments. Female participants tended to view the male contestants as better singers, but as less attractive than did male participants, and male participants found female contestants to be slightly more attractive than did female participants. Both men and women felt that the judges were more harsh towards contestants of their same sex. Despite this, men felt that the judges' comments were equally appropriate towards either sex, while women believed that the judges' comments were more appropriate for the male contestants than they were for the female contestants. Thus, while both sexes preferred male singers, women felt that the judges were not only harsher towards other women, but that they were inappropriate. And while men also found comments towards male singers to be more harsh than they were towards women, they viewed them as appropriate comments, indicating perhaps that women see themselves to some degree in the female contestant. Again, a product of social comparison. In Watanabe's second study, though, self-esteem and self-evaluation were first measured, then selecting only participants with low self-esteem to complete the rest of the experiment, at which point their state levels of dispositional Schadenfreude, that is, taking joy in the suffering of others in general, was measured, and they were given a seemingly unrelated series of arithmetic problems to complete. The subjects were exposed to the same American Idol clips as before, but this time after watching the clips, participants either received negative feedback, noting that his or her work on the arithmetic task was in the bottom 10% of respondents, positive feedback, noting that his or her work was in the top 10% of respondents, or no feedback about the math problems that they had finished before the study. Participants viewed all of the judges' comments towards male contestants as more appropriate than comments towards the female contestants, but the least appropriate when they had personally received positive feedback, indicating that Schadenfreude may be influenced by personal feelings of self-esteem. That is, when you feel good about yourself, you are less likely to feel Schadenfreude, and instead more empathetic towards others. Participants found both male and female contestants to be most attractive when they had received personal kudos from the researchers on their work, but also found contestants slightly more attractive than the control group when they had read negative feedback about their own mathematical performance. In terms of Schadenfreude, there was an interesting gender effect. While men who had been given negative feedback and had their egos damaged experienced the most joy at watching the failure of another man, women with bruised egos experienced more Schadenfreude also upon watching male contestants fail. This tendency was the case across all conditions. While men felt the most Schadenfreude in response to the failure of other men when he received negative feedback, and felt more Schadenfreude towards men across all conditions, women experienced about equal degrees of Schadenfreude towards a male contestant, both when she had received negative feedback or had received no feedback whatsoever. Women enjoy watching men suffer with no provocation, in other words. Wow, what a surprise.
Women are gross.
I agree, Samuel. Bitches ain't shit, but hoes and tricks.
But remember, these effects were only present in participants specifically selected because they had low self-esteem, and therefore only applied to others with low self-esteem, and how those people parasocially interact with media figures. An earlier study from Van Dijk, Auwerkerk, Van Kroningsbruggen, and Wesleyan 2012 previously examined the effect of envy and Schadenfreude to perceptions of participants in the Dutch equivalent of American Idol. Participants were asked to evaluate themselves, such as how confident and how intelligent they felt that they were. They then received either positive or negative feedback on a small performance task, leading them to believe that they had scored either within the top 10% or bottom 10% of respondents. Finally, subjects watch a clip from the Dutch Idols program, featuring a contestant named Eliza, who sang out of tune and was subsequently mocked by the jury. Despite looking for this clip, I can't find Eliza's audition. The name might have been changed in the research. But I would imagine that it went something like this.
If they could feel the brutal sting.
After watching the clip, participants were asked if they enjoyed watching Eliza tank, and if they felt bad for her. Participants with low self-evaluations enjoyed watching Eliza fail more when they had previously received negative feedback on the performance task. In contrast, those with high self-evaluations did not experience Schadenfreude regardless of the feedback that they received on the task, and in fact, experienced slightly less joy at her misfortune when they had received negative feedback. Further, sympathy was unrelated to experiences of Schadenfreude. These data indicate that people who tend to have lower self-esteem, or at least low self-evaluations, are the ones who are more likely to enjoy seeing someone of ostensibly a form of higher social status being a contestant on a reality show and on television being publicly ridiculed. However, the researchers suggest that due to the ordinary nature of the contestants on these sort of shows, their similarity to the viewer may actually have been part of the reason why they induce greater feelings of Schadenfreude. Again, social comparison.
I envy you. You say exactly what's on your mind, no matter how it makes you look. I can only imagine the freedom you must have not caring if people like you or not. Oh, people don't like me?
Given that it seems that many experience Schadenfreude in response to the failure of a celebrity, due to that celebrity's comparative higher status, even if they're just a contestant on a reality TV show, does this enjoyment also apply to wealthier people in general? In the first of 3 studies from Sunday et al. 2008, participants read 2 positive car reviews from a fellow college student named Jason, one of his high-status new car, a Mercedes, and the other of his lower-status new car, a Ford. They then read that Jason had driven the car to a high-end shopping mall, leaving the car with a valet, only to find the car making loud sputtering noises when attempting to leave, resulting in Jason being forced to call his mommy to come and pick him up. Participants' levels of envy and hostility were measured, and they were asked how hearing about Jason's car failure made them feel, as well as how likely he or she might be to tell others if they witnessed a similar scenario happening while in public, and what they might say about it to others. They found that Jason being seen as privileged by owning a Mercedes was related positively to envy, which in turn was related positively to hostility towards Jason and ultimately to enjoyment in response to his predicament. More specifically, being privileged was directly related to Schadenfreude. The majority of comments participants said that they would share with others remarked on the car's failure, both regarding the Ford and the Benz, but noted the amusement that they took when the Benz broke down, due to it being a quote, rich boy car. In general, positive remarks about Jason or his car were far less frequent than were negative comments. Particularly when Jason was seen as wealthy, people were more likely to not only envy him, but feel hostile towards him and take joy in watching his brand new car fail. While not everyone envies the wealth of others, I think most of us can agree that flaunting or flexing wealth is kind of obnoxious. Thus, a second experiment looked specifically at the effects of that kind of behavior. This time, participants read that Jason, again depicted as a fellow college student, had recently received a Porsche Boxster as a gift from a wealthy relative. In the flexing condition, participants were asked to imagine a scenario. It's not great methodology, in my opinion, but let's just roll with it, wherein they are eating at a restaurant patio with friends, and they notice this expensive car pull up to the venue. In the scenario, Jason revs the engine, tosses the keys to the valet, and says, "Take care of my new Porsche," like a smug little dick. Several people at the restaurant ask him about the car, and he explains that it was a gift. In the non-flexing condition, the participant was asked to imagine that they bumped into Jason in a parking lot after having previously seen the Porsche pull up to the restaurant, and had a short conversation with him about the car. He feels uncomfortable bragging about it, admits that it was a gift, and asks if he can join you and your mutual friends for dinner. After the meal, in both conditions, participants supposedly see the car sputtering in the parking lot and then breaking down on the road, and were asked how the situation might make them feel. When Jason flaunted his wealth, participants were envious of the attention he received, which in turn was related to envy of the car and hostility towards Jason. Hostility was the only variable directly related to Schadenfreude, and to a strong degree at that. People who thought about Jason flexing were more envious and in turn more hostile, leading to Schadenfreude when the car failed. This time, comments were generally far more negative, both towards Porsche as a brand and Jason, with one calling the car a $53,000 piece of shit, and saying that what happened to Jason was karma. I guess that's why some people jokingly call the Boxster the poor man's Porsche. While flaunting wealth can exacerbate feelings of Schadenfreude, people are already prone to dislike the rich, particularly when they feel as if their wealth is unearned, and therefore enjoy watching the rich kid's car break down, even if he isn't necessarily a bad guy. Because Schadenfreude affects both celebrities and the wealthy in similar ways, let's further investigate why exactly we feel Schadenfreude. The Stereotype Content Model, or SCM, predicts that we generally categorize people onto two axes, warm and competent. People we see as high in warmth but low in competence evoke pity. Those low in both warmth and competence evoke disgust. Those both high in warmth and incompetence evoke pride, while those low in warmth but high in competence evoke envy. Under this paradigm, we might expect that we would feel more Schadenfreude towards people that we see as competent but cold, and less Schadenfreude towards people we see as warm but incompetent. Chikara and Fisk 2013 conducted several experiments to examine this relationship, but were not just interested in how people said that they felt, but also how their facial expressions betrayed their true emotions.
That's okay. You'll just think we're in love.
You don't look like you're in love. You look like someone who's had some sort of industrial accident.
In their first experiment, participants saw a photo used to prime one of the stereotypes, such as an elderly, pitiable person, a disheveled, disgusting person, or an enviable businessman, and were asked how warm or competent that person is likely to be seen by society. Subjects then read that something positive, such as eating a really good sandwich, neutral, such as yawning, or negative, such as getting splashed with water from a nearby taxi, happened to each of these people, and were then asked how happy or sad each event made them feel. Participants felt the negative events were the worst when they affected the pitiable target, and were the least egregious when they affected the enviable target, illustrating a common flaw of survey methods known as social desirability bias, in that oftentimes participants are unwilling to report things that they know are probably not socially acceptable. Respondents in this first study did not report that they felt any better about the negative events happening to any of the targets, even the enviable businessman. However, their facial expressions, as I said before, betrayed their true emotions. EMG electrodes were attached to respondents' faces to measure minute movement in the zygomaticus major, or ZM, the muscle associated with smiling. Most activation in the ZM was in response to positive events, again, like eating a tasty meal.
What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?
With one prominent exception. The most ZM movement was noted when participants were reacting to the enviable person having a negative experience. In other words, people smiled the most when thinking about the man in the business suit having a really bad day.
Hey, Paul!
Yet, it's obvious that we don't always love it when bad things happen to celebrities, right? Did some people chuckle at the passing of Princess Di? Well, sure. But the outpouring of love for her surely outweighed the negativity. To further understand the nuances of how Schadenfreude specifically seems to target highly competent but low warmth figures, a second study focused specifically on investment bankers following the Great Recession of the late 2000s. Participants read an online news article about a banker named Chris Benson, who across all conditions was described as going to work each day in a designer suit, and had recently been laid off from his job due to economic conditions. In the Pride scenario, Chris has chosen to invest his new free time in advising small business owners for free. In the Disgust scenario, Chris was revealed to like the nose candy, and was now spending his unemployment checks funding his drug habit. In the Pity scenario, Chris spends his days at Starbucks looking for a job and hiding his termination from his family, while facing inevitable debt collections, foreclosure, and ultimately bankruptcy. Finally, in the Envy condition, Chris has more than enough saved up for his son's college tuition and was largely unaffected by the layoff. Respondents read that some negative event befell Chris, and were then asked how good or bad that event might make him or her feel. To compare, a separate subsection of participants then recorded their responses to 9 negative events happening to 9 enviable targets, represented by pictures of businessmen without the aforementioned descriptions. For the businessman with no backstory after the initial prime, all respondents reported similar levels of Schadenfreude when thinking about something negative happening to the businessman. However, when thinking about those with a backstory, things were a little bit different. Respondents reported the lowest levels of Schadenfreude when they read about pitiable Chris, who was at risk of bankruptcy, and the highest degrees of Schadenfreude when they read about enviable Chris, who was faring well despite the loss of his job. These data indicate that not all high-status people are seen equally, and we are generally less likely to laugh at true suffering, even of a wealthy or powerful person who has been brought to their knees, rather than the exact same person if they manage to avoid destruction. This potentially means that part of the reason why we enjoy the suffering of successful people is because we want to see them humanized, brought down to our level, but that we can still be a bit more compassionate if their degree of suffering is significant. A slightly more recent series of studies from Chikara 2015 provides some more details into the interaction between Stereotype conformity model and Schadenfreude. In their first experiment, they again paired images of a pitiable old woman, a disgusting drug addict, and an enviable businessman with positive, negative, and neutral events, but this time utilized fMRI to measure brain activity. Participants were told they would be participating in a fear factor type game, wherein he or she could administer a shock to the old woman, the drug addict, or the businessman that they had read about. Unsurprisingly, subjects were the most likely to suggest that the enviable businessman be subject to electric shocks. The final experiment in this line of research examined the relationship between envy, Schadenfreude, and harm in the context of a common real-world conflict, sports rivalry. In this case, Yankees versus Red Sox, as well as another non-rival and less competitive team, the Orioles. Yankees and Red Sox fans were scanned via fMRI, and after hours of no channels found, monitored them while they watched various plays from different games featuring their favored team losing, winning, or performing normally. They chose these teams because Pirates fans were too accustomed to losing, and Phillies fans were ineligible because most of the equipment sensitive enough to register these brain patterns was likely to ignite their blood alcohol content from 10 feet away.
Everybody in here looks like they've been in a terrible fight. These two ladies are in the middle of a terrible fight right now.
Philly fans are brutal.
They also chose baseball fans because football fans' brain patterns cannot be measured by fMRI, as all you get are dial-up modem noises. Participants reported experiencing more positive emotions when their favored team scored against their rival, when their rival failed to score against their favored team, and most of all, when the rival failed to score against the Orioles, the relatively less competitive third team, indicating a pure Schadenfreude response not predicated on personal gain for the favored team. Red Sox and Yankees fans presented greater activation in the ventral striatum, a part of the brain associated with reward when they watched their favorite team succeed, and in contrast, presented with greater activation in the anterior cingulate cortex, a part of the brain associated with pain, when their favored team failed. This means that seeing people we dislike fail activates the basic pleasure center of our monkey brains, even if we aren't the ones winning against them. Obviously, the media environment of 2021 is vastly dissimilar from that of a media age wherein parasocial relationships were unidirectional. That is, classically, parasocial relationships form between a viewer and a character or media figure, with the viewer feeling as if he or she has come to know that person, but with very little ability to contact them. Social media allows viewers to more directly interact with celebrities and public figures, which, while still parasocial, may give the feeling of interpersonal interaction, and thus Schadenfreude may apply to social media, in that envy is a product of social comparison, and it is social comparison that produces positive feelings of Schadenfreude when a higher status person is brought to their knees. This seems to be the case for friends and acquaintances as well as media figures, but do these same psychological mechanisms apply to social media in the same way that they do to real-life celebrities? For answers, we can look to Auerkirk and Johnson 2016, who examined the motives for which people choose to follow others on social media, and found that it's often not done out of a desire to be that person's friend, but rather to see that person fail. Time spent on social media, follower counts, motivations for following someone, and various personality traits were assessed in this study. Participants were then asked to imagine a scenario, again, something I'm not fond of in social science, wherein a former classmate who had excelled in high school in all domains from education to sports added them on Facebook. The first thing the participants saw was a post where either this former classmate mentioned taking a vacation, to which another person responded that said vacationer was on welfare, serving as a threat to status, or a post wherein the former classmate added some photos, to which another user commented on his reduced physical attractiveness.
Bill? No. Wow. Wow, right? I would not have guessed that was you.
Yeah, I've gained a little weight.
Did you now? Oh, well, no, it's hardly noticeable.
The researchers broke down rationales for following into 4 subtypes: antisocial, which included items such as making fun of others and gossip; insecurity motives, which included items such as hoping that senpai will notice them; sociable motives, which included items such as genuinely finding the person likable, unbelievable on social media, I know; or inspirational motives, such as seeing that person as a motivation to improve the self. There were some overlaps between the measures, indicating that people who follow others on social media specifically because they want to feel better than that person often do so out of a dual rationale between antisocial motives and insecurity motives. Said motives and their relationship with why people follow others on social media are illuminating to say the least. Antisocial motives were associated negatively with self-esteem and life satisfaction, but positively associated with a desire for popularity, narcissism, and most strongly with Schadenfreude, indicating that many people who hate follow others on social media are not only low in self-appreciation, but that a major rationale for their hate may be a desire to become popular themselves. I know that probably seems like a no-brainer, but without data, it's just speculation. Further, antisocial motives for following others were the most strongly of these measured, although minimally, related to time spent on social media websites, while in contrast, it was the only motive negatively related to follower numbers. Thus, it seems that people who follow others because they want to mock them and because they hate them tend to dislike themselves, and are predominantly driven by narcissism and the desire to be popular instead of the onus of their ire. This is kind of scientific proof that they hate because they ain't.
I am better than everybody! Wow, I just realized how rude I am.
Insecurity motives for following others mostly mirror antisocial motives, but to a slightly lesser degree of intensity, indicating both motives describe why people might follow others that they actually dislike on social media. In contrast, sociable motives for following others were weakly associated with self-esteem measures, desire for popularity, and narcissism, but were related slightly to life satisfaction. Inspirational motives were negatively related to self-esteem, but comparatively to very small degrees, and were similarly related to very slight degrees positively to narcissism, Schadenfreude, and a need for popularity. Specifically though, the primary reason why people follow others online with the intentions to experience Schadenfreude or joy at their misfortunes are antisocial purposes, while the primary reason why people might follow others to experience sympathy is insecurity in turn. Further, antisocial motives were strongly related to intentions to gossip, but in something of a sad turn, also out of a desire for friendship. What we see here then is that while there are positive reasons for following someone on social media, many people do it almost entirely because they want to see that person fail, and specifically, they want to see them fail to feed their own narcissism and to bolster their own low sense of self-esteem, but also maybe deep down because they just want a friend to shit talk with. But those nasty motives surely override that possibility, at least to a degree. For were the people who are desiring their own popularity to actually get it, then I would imagine their friends would turn on them rather quickly. Being similarly driven by a desire for popularity and narcissism, specifically derived at the detriment of others. But certainly not all of the time, some people just like to watch a car crash happen before their eyes. That is a part of Schadenfreude. I'll be the first to admit that I've enjoyed watching the car crash that is Christian for over a decade. Because seeking Schadenfreude is a rationale for which people hate follow others online, does this have a snowball effect, wherein more people join in on the fun of watching celebrities fail, or as is so often the case, joining in to cancel them? Overend, De Baker, and Van den Bosch 2018 examined the potential for mob mentality in bashing celebrities in response to 12 Flemish-language news articles posted to Facebook. The articles focused on Dutch singers and the British royal family, among others, so generally high-status targets. Using qualitative methods, the researchers coded the responses to the article as positive, negative, or neutral, with a positive tone being characterized by supportive and optimistic words, and a negative tone being categorized by the use of hurtful words, curse words, or pessimistic expressions. In a similar manner, the tone of the article was assessed. Half of the articles came from a generally respected newspaper, and the other from an outlet closer to a tabloid. The general tone of both articles was neutral, while the responses on Facebook were far more negative. 19% of raters viewed the tabloid publication, HLN, to have a negative tone, and 29% of comments in response to it were rated as negative as well. And it received 4 times as many comments as the non-tabloid source. Obviously, people are more interested in gossip than they are in real news. Moreover, people who perceived the article as positive were more likely to leave a positive comment, while those who viewed the article as negative were more likely to leave a negative comment. And speaking of negative comments, some of these are pretty spicy. Some expressed anger at the publication for being fake news, and others with media dishonesty in general. Many comments directed towards the celebrities named in the articles themselves were pretty overtly nasty towards those celebrities, outright declaring hatred towards the public figure and using happy face emojis in response to bad news related to them. Others applied negative traits to the celebrities that they may not possess, such as being greedy, and even others just turned into an outright slap fight about feminism. Several people expressed that the celebrities should be able to deal with negative comments and press coverage, while others, in all honesty, just started simping for the celebrities in response. And ultimately, of course, the comments devolved into everyone comparing each other to World War II baddies, once again proving evidence for the existence of Godwin's Law. If Schadenfreude is a positive feeling of joy that comes from the suffering of others, does seeing someone who we envy fail actually make us feel better off? Or is seeing others suffer a reward in and of itself? Wapker, 2015, tested this by having participants play a winner-take-all game based on a roll of the die. Competitors rolled a 6-sided die 5 times, each with 3 numbers on the die tied to their win or loss. For each roll, participants bet 0.5 euros from a pool of 5 that they had been given by the researchers. The winner of the best out of 5 got to keep all of their betting money and received a 20 euro prize. Afterwards, the losing participant was given an option to spend the remains of their 5 euros to take money away from the winner, which, while not transferring any of the money they took away to themselves, provided an opportunity for spite. This spite was not free. Losers needed to spend 0.10 euros to subtract 1 euro from the winner's pot, meaning a truly spiteful loser could spend all of their remaining cash to ensure the winner received nothing as well.
It's not about winning. It's making sure all these other squads don't get to have any fun. I should probably kill myself, though.
32% of the sample chose to act spitefully, collectively reducing the earnings of the winning players by 217 euros. On average, losers were willing to give up 1 euro just to spite the winners, and the total effect of this spite was a loss of 13.8% of the total money available in the experiment. No one got this money except the researchers. They were just willing to piss it away out of anger. Thus, it seems that Schadenfreude is in and of itself its own reward, even worth losing assets to ensure that the winner is taken down a peg. When asked why they chose to do this, the most common rationale was because the losers felt it was unfair for the winner to have more than they did, with one elaborating, "I usually would be happy with winning 2.5 euros, but if the other player wins 22.5, then the 2.5 are worthless." This kind of thinking has gotten Europe into trouble before, I should point out, now hasn't it? Equal numbers of participants who acted spitefully reported the rationale as just a part of the game, an act of frustration with losing because they viewed inequality as a form of injustice, we all know who those people were, or as a form of retaliation against the winner. Even though the spiteful losers ended up with less cash and were therefore less well off, 36.4% felt happier after reducing the earnings of the winner. You have to remember, in this study, everyone just got a free 2.5 euros, enough to buy oneself a cappuccino at the fanciest cafe in Friedrichshafen, Germany, where this study was conducted. So technically, everyone was a winner. But the results here indicate that for about a third of people, it is not enough that they succeed, others should also fail. Somewhat relatedly, Saxgarvi, Helen, and Balbanis 2016 examined a scenario wherein Schadenfreude might actually boost self-esteem. In their preliminary study, female participants were shown a photo supposedly either of Jessica Alba, the celebrity, or Jessica Melba, just an average woman. Subjects then read that either Jessica was a superstar at the height of her career, or that her career was in a tailspin after photos of her at a strip club were made public. Subjects rated how attractive Alba or Melba was, and questioned about their own levels of self-esteem. When Alba or Melba was famous and involved in a scandal, participants reported more self-esteem, while participants reported lower self-esteem when Alba or Melba was just a regular woman. In short, exposure to a socially attractive, non-celebrity enhances personal self-esteem, while exposure to a socially unattractive non-celebrity decreases self-esteem. Since not only self-esteem, but envy continually tend to be terms that pop up in the study of Schadenfreude, let's take a closer look at envy. Who is enviable? Who envies others? And are envious people happy? In the second part of this series, we'll look into how Schadenfreude relates to politics and social belief systems. And in the third part, we'll examine the relationships between envy and narcissism. But for now, let's come to a few conclusions. We've all occasionally laughed at the misfortunes of others. I mean, that was America's Funniest Home Video's entire gimmick, and one which has persisted over time as the internet has replaced television as a primary source of people embarrassing themselves and getting hit in the face with random objects. Clearly, many of us get a kick out of a little bit of pain at the expense of others. However, we don't generally seem to like seeing people get seriously injured, and when we do, we don't like seeing all people get seriously injured.
He's in pain, babe. It's not funny. His legs are broken. He can't stand. He's collapsing because his legs are broken and...
By virtue of the same psychological phenomena that cause us to enjoy physical gaffes, we often also enjoy seeing powerful people suffer or being taken down a peg to a degree that we do not generally experience when witnessing the same misfortune befall average people. There is absolutely nothing wrong with laughing at someone getting a pie to the face or slipping on a banana peel. But is there something wrong with basing your own self-esteem and sense of self on the failures of others? Does the moral acceptability apply to sharing the suffering of others, or even encouraging or inducing the suffering of others, all for the enjoyment of ourselves? Let me know what you guys think, though, in the comments down below. If you want to support the channel, go down to the description and click that link and check out Surfshark VPN, or by looking into my merch store, or by backing me on Patreon or Subscribestar. I want to give an enormous and eternal thank you to all of my supporters here. You guys are absolutely amazing and allow me to keep making these videos even after YouTube seriously suppresses what I'm doing. Thank you all so much. I hope you all have a wonderful new year. It can't be as bad as 2020 now, can it? And with that, dear friends, Altana Volt.